Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Megan Remington. I am our Community Education Coordinator here at Coconino Community College. I'm based in Flagstaff at the Lone Tree campus, but I know we have folks that are joining us from all across Coconino County, including hopefully Page. If you're from Page, we've got Kay Liam with us in silent box form, possibly below me. That's how it shows up on my screen. So you'll have to give Kay a shout out if you're in Page, because I know she's very excited to see her Page community here. So quick thank you to Shawn Nittman. He's going to be our presenter this evening, and he's got some really awesome stuff to talk about. He and I met before this. You guys are in for a real treat. Tons of great stories, tons of really relevant, useful information. So before we get started, I just have a few quick housekeeping items for you. So if you've never been on a webinar before, just so you know, you don't have sound and you don't have video. You are participating either via text or just watching and enjoying. If you are able to, you might notice that in the on the right side of your screen where all of our participants are listed, if your name isn't listed on there, if there's a way, if you hover your cursor over it, it'll give you the option to rename yourself. If you could put at least your first name on there, that helps a ton, because if you have a question, it makes it easier for us to address you. So how are we going to interact with you? Well, we have a Q&A box. Down on the bottom here, we've got a little option where you can enter in questions. So when you go on there, you can ask questions. You can upvote questions that you like. You can add your own stuff. That's great. We're going to answer questions at the end of the session. So if you ask a question, we don't address it right away, don't worry, we're going to get to you. We are ending right at 7 o'clock, but if we have a ton of questions, Shawn has very kindly offered to stick around and make sure that your questions are all answered. We have a chat box, which I believe, let me make sure I can actually see it. So you have a cute little chat box. You can message just the panelists. You can message the whole group. Use that to make a comment to, we're going to actually utilize the chat box shortly to, make it so that you can give us kind of what you would do in a certain situation. We'll get to that in a little bit. We have an option on here. So I noticed we've had a couple people raise their hands. So if you have a question, if you enter it in the chat box or if you enter it in the Q&A, you don't have to raise your hand. We promise we will get to you. So no worries there. And then finally, we're going to have a post-webinar survey that's going to go out tomorrow. If you registered ahead of time, we've got your email address. So we're going to send that out to you along with some really cool resources that Shawn has put together for you. And we're going to ask you, what do you want to learn? What would you like us to put together next? And if you haven't already opted into our email list, you can let us know about that as well. And save the date, October 6th at 3 p.m. We're going to be having our next Comet Talk with Flagstaff Shelter Services. So that's going to be super cool. And yeah, Shawn, you are welcome to go ahead and take over the share, and I am going to turn off my video and let you take things from here.
Sounds good, Megan. Thanks for that introduction. Appreciate it. What I'm trying to do, Megan, is get your...
Do you need me to turn off the...
PowerPoint
I'll just stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, and then... All right, so if we're good to go, as Megan mentioned, I'm Shawn Nittman. I'm your presenter tonight, and what we've got to do is we're going to talk about basically how to avoid a wilderness survival situation by learning safe hiking practices. And hopefully that's what you came to learn something about tonight. And in addition, to try to raise your level of comfort with going out in the great outdoors here in Northern Arizona, tell you some things about how search and rescue works in Coconino County. And we thought that maybe this would be a timely thing as we go into, hopefully our weather's going to cool down here a little bit as we go into the fall. We know that's a great season in Northern Arizona for hiking. We also, it won't be long before the aspen starts to turn gold up there on the peaks and people like to go leaf peeping. maybe what you do is pinyon picking, another fall event, or potentially a hunting season. So hopefully these kinds of things that we're going to talk about in terms of safe hiking practices will apply to whatever activity it is that you enjoy. Just a little quick introduction about me and why I think I might be able to help you out with some of this information. First of all, I am a semi-retired guy. I keep out of trouble two main ways besides playing and working and living with my family. One thing I do is I am a part-time faculty at the college. I teach biology. And then the other thing, I am a search and rescue volunteer here in the county and have been since 2013. My informal experience with working with the outdoors, I grew up in northern Colorado. My dad was Colorado Game and Fish. He was a fish biologist. I have my earliest memories are going out with him out into the woods and in the mountains in northern Colorado and learning from him. He was quite an outdoorsman. My brother and I grew up that way. All my friends did. And so we learned a lot. And we started going out on our own and made lots of mistakes. I'm here to tell you that I got through all of them okay. I've been doing the same kinds of outdoor activities, camping, hunting, hiking, fishing, for about 35 years now in Arizona. Wouldn't trade it. As far as formal training and relative to safe hiking practices and search and rescue and so forth, I have several hundred hours of wilderness medical training, starting with the first aid class at Coconino Community College. I took that with a faculty tuition waiver back in the day. And that progressed to wilderness first aid and then a wilderness first responder course. I've recertified in those things many times. I've taken CPR and AED, American Heart Association stuff, National Outdoor Leadership Association stuff for the rest of the medical. We've also had lots of search and rescue trainings on wilderness medicine and how to assess patients and then mitigate their circumstance, whatever it turns out to be. As far as search and rescue, we've gotten a lot of training on personal safety. And in addition, I've done 2 formal survival courses. I just recently completed one with, maybe you've seen Cody Lundeen on dual survival back in the day. He's got his Aboriginal Living Skills School down in Prescott. And I did a couple of days down there in the bush at on the flanks of the Bradshaw Mountains recently. And then I also did a couple of days with Tony Nestor, who was Ancient Pathways was his organization. It was based in Flagstaff. Did that with him several years ago. He's since moved to Colorado Springs, but those were great experiences. And last but not least, when it comes to the outdoors, just counting recently, I've been on 97 search and rescue missions, so closing in on the magic 100 here. And I have seen folks in a wide variety of situations when it comes to having gotten in trouble hiking or trying to enjoy the great outdoors. Sometimes it's poor decision making, sometimes it's lack of preparation, sometimes it's just plain bad luck. Accidents do happen. We go out sometimes and work with folks who are more fit, more experienced, and better equipped than we are, and they still sometimes get in a jam and have to give us a call. Okay, so having said all of that, I thought to try to engage
Shawn,
you guys. Yes.
It looks like your share didn't pop up on our screens. You want to try sharing one more time?
So are we talking about the presentation?
Yeah, your PowerPoint.
Okay, so that we should. Let me see where we're at here. I thought we had.
Perfect.
There?
Yep, nailed it.
Okay. Thanks for catching it, Megan.
No
I
problem.
thought I'd do a little introduction. And okay, so here we go. We thought we would engage you guys a little bit with a scenario. And here's a little something I cooked up. Borrowed some things from some experiences on some missions this summer, as well as other things. And I thought, I've done my intro, so our little scenario that I was going to give you guys to think about, a chance to think about. I don't know if you're familiar with the Pumpkin Trail on Kentrick Mountain. If you're actually on the trail, it might look like this. If you're not familiar with Kentrick, at a distance, it looks like this. It's got this nice maybe you can see my cursor blue GPS track that somebody collected as they walked up. This is not the Pumpkin Trail, it's a different trail, but that is Kentrick Mountain. It's 10,000 feet above sea level up here, and it's just north and west of the peaks. And I thought, well, we'll give you this situation to think about. And then at the end, we'll ask you, so given that scenario, how do you feel? What would you do? And assuming that your scenario turns out okay, what would you do differently next time? So here's a whole lot of text. I'll paraphrase. You're going to hike the Pumpkin Trail. You know that it is 4.8 miles from the trailhead up to the top of the mountain, and you think that the monsoon seasons are over, so you take a hike. Oh, by the way, you went solo. Did not tell anybody where you went, and you hiked up to the top of that thing, waved hi at the fire lookout operator, who's a friendly person up there at the top of the hill. And then you turned around and came down, and since you thought monsoons were over, you got a later start than usual. So you were like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you start down the trail. And lo and behold, you get down to about 9,000 feet, and you roll your ankle on one of those gnarly tree roots that's sticking out of the trail, and you hear a nasty pop and feel it in there, and ow, things have suddenly take a turn for the worse. And then after you get done rolling around for a little bit, you look up and you see, wow, it looks like some dark monsoon sort of thunderclouds rolling in, and you see some flashes of lightning. Next thing you know, you are checking your cell phone. Cell phone is unfortunately just searching for service. You don't have any. Battery's going pretty quick. And now you start to feel the outflow winds with which you are familiar in northern Arizona, which signal the rain is imminent. You know what? Darkness isn't too far down the road. You thought you were going to get down to the trailhead before dusk. And well, there you are. I've given you a little indication on what you're wearing and how you're equipped there if you're trying to read along on the screen. And that's the summary. So if you would take a moment, think about, you're in this pickle, and if you're inspired and you want to respond in chat and say, so how do you feel right now? What do you think you ought to do? What are you thinking? Wow, I've learned some things here. I will do some other stuff differently next time. So if you've got to put something in chat, sick 'em. I'll be quiet for a minute, let you guys respond, and then we'll take a look at what materializes. And for the good of the order, we'll go through a little bit of that. So it's balls in your court.
Do you have the chat up on your screen there, Shawn?
I am pulling that up as we speak.
Oh, good.
Well, Bob says, oh boy, this is bad. I wonder what Bob thinks is bad about this. We got Victor suggesting that we would first take more water. Yeah, I did mention, I think I mentioned that this person had a liter of water and half a bag of caramel corn. Put on extra clothes. I don't remember mentioning you had any extra clothes. I don't believe you do in this scenario. Do I have a med kit? Really good question. Okay, so the chats are rolling in now. I like this one. Scramble back up to the fire lookout. Next time, bring a two-way radio and tell someone. Wow, we hope your ankle is usable enough to be able to scramble back up. I got somebody suggesting take a minute to calm down and create a plan. Wow. For a lot of us, pretty tall order. So it looks like we've got some folks who have, Beckett suggests that I would be scared. I think a lot of us would be. Tell multiple people where I was going. All right, get a windbreaker on and think. I think you guys get the picture here. I'm suggesting that the person in this scenario took off and violated a lot of common sense practice for safe hiking, and what they're confronting right now is the potential for a full-on wilderness survival situation. So we got all kinds of response to that. I am going to proceed. I just want to engage you guys a little bit and say, what are we thinking here? Because we know now's a good time of the year to go out. So let's see. What to do before you go hiking. So can kind of keep that scenario in your mind. There you are at 9,000 feet with a bad ankle on the Pumpkin Trail on Kentrick. If you haven't been, it's a great hike. It's not for people who, well, it is for people who are reasonably fit because it's almost 3,000 feet elevation gain over the course of the 4.8 miles up to the top. But if we were going to plan differently, I want to go through basically 3 tiers here. What to do before you go hiking, or to think about, and many of you may be very experienced in this. So a little bit about what to do during the hike, and then some things to follow up with on the tail end. So what to know before you go. So once you've chosen a place or two to hike, you talk to your friends or however it is that you learn about trails and the like. Be realistic when you assess yourself and your partners in terms of, fitness is underrated in my book. Boy, can you get yourself out of a lot of jams if you're really fit. But trying to match your fitness to the trail in terms of length, difficulty. Not all trails are created equal, as you well know. Some of them, roots, rocks, deadfall trees, all kinds of stuff, obstacles, and some are like, little Jeep roads up into the wilderness, and it's a way different thing to walk on them. Assess your skill level and just try to match what you can do with the thing that you're trying. As far as your health, I think it's always good to go with another person and be realistic about your health. And if you've got, even if it's something as simple as allergic to bee stings, hopefully you are taking plans to mitigate that, whatever it might be. You're carrying your Benadryl, your EpiPen. You are informing your partners of same, hey, if we get up there and I get hit by a bee, my EpiPen's in my right front pocket. If I can't administer that myself, would you help me out so that they don't watch you go into anaphylactic shock trail side and say, what the heck is going on in here, right? So communicate on that. Obviously, you want to check the weather. This person in our little scenario probably did not check the weather because National Weather Service, hey, they're right out here west of town. They got the Doppler radar running. You know that they give you the region forecast. You also know that you can click on spots and get a point forecast before you go and say, what am I likely to run into? And I would advise thinking about not only how's it going to be this afternoon, because I know it's only going to take me this afternoon to go up and back, but what's it going to be like tonight and tomorrow on the outside chance I get hung up, and let me go prepared for conditions currently as well as in the not too distant future. And last but not least, are there any hazards? I mean, Pumpkin Trail was right in the middle of the pumpkin fire. And the last time Kentrick burned, there were deadfall trees. There were little rolling rocks and little mudslides and all kinds of things. So you want to be aware of that kind of stuff because conditions change. You may be able to see in my little picture here right now, this is from my search and rescue history. If you're not familiar with it, this is the little feature known as the water wheel. It's on Ellison Creek. It's down in the Tonto Basin near Payson. The little creek comes off of the Mogollon Rim. And maybe you remember a couple of summers back, we had a family of 14. You can see the flat rocks down here. And these folks are enjoying this. It's a very popular swimming hole. Enjoying this little place and in their lawn chairs, etc. Little did they know that it rained hard on a fire scar from that summer on the rim. It wasn't raining where they were, and this huge flash flood comes ripping down Ellison Creek, and this is their first view of the flash flood. The big dark water with all the ash and all the soot and all the debris came down. It washed all 14 away. 10 folks died. So that was one of our, when we say search and rescue, it's not always rescue, sometimes it's recovery. That was a multi-agency response to go down there on Ellison Creek and look for the remains of this poor family that got caught. In addition, they were in a place where they had no cell service. So even though National Weather Service had issued a flash flood alert for their area. They did not get that. Yeah, a little dramatic, but the weather can really matter sometimes. So you guys are maybe familiar with this. National Weather Service, Go Team, we work with them all the time. While we're in the field of search and rescue, they are giving us updates on what's going on with the cells, working with our search coordinators, anything imminent that we need to know about. In addition, on the front end, I think many of you probably have heard the phrase, you want to carry the 10 essentials. And so everybody's seen that list. If you haven't, you can look it up on REI and some other websites, or just Google it, and they'll say, here's some things you ought to carry. Well, in my book, it's not enough to carry them. You should learn what they're for. Excuse me, how to use them. And I say practice in your backyard before you actually have to use them on the side of the trail. We had some people suggesting that we want to put on extra clothes, we want to hunker down, we want to do some things. Building a fire might have been an option in this scenario if the ankle's bad enough and you are really immobilized. So you want to carry 10 essentials in order to address these 5, I think I've shortened this list, the 5 priorities of survival. First aid, shelter, fire, communication, and water. Notice food isn't on the list. Most of us can go quite a long time without eating. I suggest that you take some salty snacks and some sugary stuff anyway, but the real keys are, and we'll take these individually as we go along in the next several slides, is to be able to carry those things. You may be wondering, it says, carry those 10 essentials, learn how to use them, practice with them, and so that you can address these 5 priorities. And that all of this is dictated by the 3 Ps. If you're wondering what the 3 Ps are, in my book, physics, physiology, and psychology. So we want to take advantage of what we know about physics to maintain our physiology. And when we can do that, then our psychology is maintained. We can make good decisions. We got a positive mental attitude, and we are much less likely to make errors that don't end well in the outdoors. This little picture here is we called it a familiarization hike. This is the infamous West Fork. Some people call it the worst fork of Oak Creek. And these are 2 SAR gentlemen here, and this is me. And we said, let's go from the Woody Mountain end, 14 river miles, down to the Call of the Canyon end in Oak Creek Canyon, see what that's all about and kind of document the hazards that come up. It's not a frequent flyer for search and rescue missions, but when we get folks that get hung up in here, it's the real deal because conditions are quite interesting. So taking these one at a time, it says carry a survival kit with the 10 essentials so you can address these priorities. And so I got a little picture here. I blew open this is my minimalist kit laid out on the stump in the backyard. And you guys, I mean, just by eyeballing, you can see some of the stuff that I carry in there. If I was going to pick out the holy trinity of the 10 essentials, I'd say this knife, that cordage, and this fire starter. That thing is foolproof. I mean, we may offer a course down the road where I can say, here's what makes it foolproof and why I suggest you carry something that looks like that. But just these 3, boy, I'll tell you what, you can modify your environment in a lot of ways and save yourself a world of hurt. And then you can see some of the other things involved. There's my dinosaur cell phone, the one I used to carry. Got an iPhone, I've upgraded now. Signal mirror, whistle, medications. You know, I got my Benadryl in there and my prescription stuff, and then some painkillers and some not too big of deals, but you know, just for the sake of carrying it. My lip balm goes wherever I go because I get chapped lips. A little bit of first aid, and you can kind of see the rest of it. And you say, well, just how much gear is that? And if I were to show you that kit, let's see if I can pop that bead out. My kit is this big. There's no reason to not, in my book, carry that and learn how to operate the stuff in it. Man, what a difference that would have made in our little scenario, because I've got a little, it's called a heat sheet, which is the equivalent of a space blanket, which would double as keep the rain off me, reflect my own radiant heat back onto myself. And even if I was poorly clothed, I might be able to live out through the monsoon storm that's bearing down on us on Kentrick Mountain.
Hey,
This
Shawn,
is my knife. Yeah.
quick question. Are you providing information about the items in your kit in your resources?
You know, there are resources there that will talk about those items.
Okay. We had a question from Barbara asking about one of the items that you had mentioned and what brand and stuff like that. So if you're able to provide that information, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. And if Barbara wants to stick around and talk a little bit afterwards, we can do a little show and tell.
Thank you, sir.
And I was gonna hold up one more thing, and that is, this is my knife. You can see I got duct tape on it. Duct tape's supposed to repair everything, right? And then the knife is not a big deal, fairly simple and straightforward, but it does have some really critical features that make this superior to most folding knives and other kinds of knives that are out there. More on that later. Back to sharing the screen here. Okay, so that's the kit, and then you're supposed to be able to address, these priorities. So when you go out, you want to say, what am I carrying with me? You know, what kind of magic have I got in here that's going to allow me to maintain my core body temperature, keep me hydrated, those kinds of things. So of our 5 survival priorities, first aid. First aid's way beyond the scope of this course. My suggestion is that you consider taking a course, because your confidence level in terms of handling things will go way up psychologically if you've been through, hey, you know what? I know how to stop a major bleed. I know what to do with a fracture. I know what to do with these, you know, an allergic reaction. So first aid course key. CPR, can't beat it. AED, not going to find those out in the woods, but CPR, lightning strike, maybe one of the first mitigations for some people is you got to restart their heart. And CPR will do that in lots of circumstances. If there was anything to focus on in a first aid course, if you're thinking about learning things that are valuable for hiking, is learn the SS, the signs and symptoms, and the TX, the treatments for. These 3 and in this order. Dehydration, we want to recognize the signs and symptoms. A lot of folks in Arizona walk around mostly dehydrated most of the time, and they start their hike that way. And things only go downhill from there, even though they're drinking some water. Dehydration is directly connected and causes concerns in being able to regulate your body temperature. So dehydration is linked to hypothermia. It's also linked to hyperthermia, too cold, too hot. And we'll talk about the way that goes is your circulatory system. You can imagine what is your body physiologically? How does it react to being cold? Withdraws blood into your core, and you shiver to try and generate heat. Okay, if your blood is thick as ketchup because you haven't been drinking enough water, that system doesn't work like it's supposed to. If you get dehydrated, then hypothermic, the old mind starts to go, fine motor skills start to go, you got issues. Similarly with hyperthermia, you know, physiologically what happens to you when you get too hot, you send blood to the surface, you dilate your surface blood vessels. You see people kind of get more veiny on hot days. And what else? And you sweat. What's sweat? Water. What's carrying the water? Your circulatory system. You got to keep it going into you because you're losing it and trying to keep your body core temperature where it's supposed to be. Last but not least, common sense recommendation to me is carry your prescriptions in a kit and assume that you're not going to be out there for just this afternoon. What if I'm out there for the next day or two because of circumstances I haven't imagined yet? And after you've taken a course or some training, make your own kit and make it something that you know how to use. Okay, so that's first aid. Shelter. Shelter starts with the clothes on your back. Most of us know that we want to dress in layers, a base, an insulation, an environmental layer when it's cold. You still want a base that keeps the sweat off of you. And then a layer over that when it's hot. What's your job? To manipulate these layers in such a way as to keep your core body temperature regulated, but you're not sweating and you're not shivering. And that trying to match the adding and subtracting of clothes to your level of activity so that you don't sweat or shiver is, you're an experienced person when you can pull that stunt. But the bottom line is to think about what conditions am I going to face? I can tell you how I do it here. If I know I'm going to go on call for search and rescue, I check weather at 3 spots. At 10,000 feet on the peaks, here in town, 7,000 feet, and then down at 4,000 feet down by Sedona. In the temperature variations and wind variations and the precip forecast, all goes into my thinking about what am I going to take in my pack if I get called out to one of those locations. Fire, your shelter. Well, okay, so start with clothes, and then you should have some external options like that heat sheet that I was describing, or a space blanket. There's other kinds of things out there, a small tarp. All become critical in managing your body temperature. And then a real key, seasonally dependent, of course, is fire. And the goal would be for you to become an educated user of fire, which means you recognize fire appropriate resources no matter what environment that you're in. You know that you have an intention for a fire. Is it, I just need to sit down and warm up here for the next hour? Because building a warming fire is a totally different enterprise in terms of the resources and the technique, in terms, as opposed to, I think I got to spend the night here and it's going to get way cold and I got to do this thing with fire. So knowing the different applications and recognizing the resources, and like I said, having practiced before the chips were down is a good thing. And in Arizona, please, oh please, it's not enough just to learn how to use them. Making them and use them, that's half of it, right? The other half is how to put the dang things out. My oldest boy is a wildland firefighter. He's currently on the Flag Hotshot crew. He's down battling the Rock House fire near San Carlos Reservoir. We have a lot of human starts, as you know, in Arizona, because people don't have some fundamental things in mind about, I got one started and I got to take care of business. You say, you might be wondering about this picture I have here. This is a couple summers back. This is the, I don't know if you're familiar with Sycamore Canyon. It comes off the rim over in the Flagstaff area, goes down into Verde Valley. And I'm not sure what you're seeing, but that is 3 separate fires all going at once. And the backstory is a guy solo hiked way up into Sycamore Canyon, expecting there to be water at the Forest Service shelter that's up there, because the Forest Service makes that the standard that they're going to leave gallons. Well, he gets there and having drunk all of his water, and there's no water at the shelter. So he has to hike all the way back. By the time he's all the way back, this is late May, it's pretty hot. This guy literally is starting to die of dehydration. He crawled and lit 3 fires, because we know that anything in threes, whistle blasts, fires, light flashes, are considered distress signals. Well, he managed to get them started. Lookout spotted him. Payson Hell Attack comes in to do the initial attack on this thing, and they see a guy barely functional on the ground with his orange shorts on a stick, waving, "Help me." Well, so the hell attack guys are there to start putting out the fire, and it turns into now they got to respond to a medical emergency as well. Long story short, the fires coalesced, took off, turned into a big deal. Hundreds of men and resources sent in to attack this in a remote wilderness situation, and that's the bad side of it. The flip side is setting the fires did save this guy's life, because without him, he'd have died there of dehydration. But so much for that. So what did we do? We did first aid, shelter, fire. What else? Oh, communications. Yes. Everybody's, all the fan favorites are out there of the all-powerful iPhone. And most of the time, it's getting better. It's truly a thing of beauty. In this day and age, when you make a phone call, you dial 911 on your iPhone. If you've got service and it gets through to dispatch, we have it's called phase 2 technology that will give a GPS location from where you made the call. At least that's how it's supposed to work. Is it 100% all the time? No. Can vary with weather, can vary with users. If cell service is intermittent, then that's maybe or maybe not really powerful. However, a cell phone by itself is not a survival kit. Googling how to make a fire when you need one on the side of the hill when you're hurt and the storm's coming in is not a very effective way to get ready for what you got to do. Like I said, we want you to learn that stuff in your backyard where you're comfortable, and helps right there. The other thing with a cell phone or any other technology, as powerful as some of the GPS and all the other wonders are, they become what I like to refer to as an attention trap. And you get sucked into what's going on in here. And folks, this is connected to reality, but this ain't reality. Reality is out there. Carry it. You want to be able to communicate. And then you probably saw in my kit, mirrors and whistles. We've mentioned this. Dehydration is in first aid directly connected to hypo and hyperthermia. If you're not familiar with this, okay, so I'll show off my biology background here a little bit. Water is key. It is key for life on a cellular level. If this is one cell, all the chemical reactions that make you possible and do the things that you do that happen in the cell are chemical reactions that have to happen in an aqueous environment. You got to keep your cells hydrated for them to function properly. It's that simple. We already mentioned, if your blood is thick as ketchup from dehydration, you aren't going to be able to regulate your body temperature in a normal fashion, and you will descend into about half the person you usually are in short order. Last but certainly not least, your judgment. Your brain would be happiest in a jar of water, let's make it sugar water, at 98.6 degrees. And your brain does not like to vary from that very much. You go up a few degrees, it starts to get cranky. You go down a few degrees, it starts to get cranky. You want to keep hydrated so that your neurons can talk to each other appropriately. So we said what to do before. Those are some considerations before. Take 10 essentials so you can address 5 priorities of survival. What do you do while you're on your hike? I mean, obviously you're out there to enjoy this, right? In addition, we want you to periodically catch yourself. Oh, I'm really not paying attention here. We want you to pay attention like this Harris hawk. This is a denizen of our lower Sonoran Desert in the great state of Arizona. I'd say whatever that bird is looking at, it is seeing it clearly, and you want to be the same. You want to see things near first and then far, and you want to think in terms of 540 degrees, 360 degrees around me, 180 degrees over the top of me. Periodically, check what's going on. Weather-wise, look at the surroundings. Hey, we got some new hazards here. Check in on your companions. Do Joe Blow and Susie Q look like they're still doing okay? I noticed that, so Joe's over there and maybe his positive mental attitude is starting to nose over. That could be an easy sign of maybe he's a little dehydrated. Let's take a break and have a drink. Hopefully your companions are also checking on you, but the pay attention part is key. You want to make sure that you're aware of what's going on around you. Last, but certainly not least, is part of your pre-trip preparation. We want you guys to get in the habit of, it's called a 5W plan, that you leave a plan. It's best if you do with 2 responsible adults, so that, and some of you said this in the chat as I'm thinking of it, that said, you know what, tell somebody where you're going. And so where you're going, when you propose to be done and coming back, who's going out with you? How are you getting there? Which vehicle? So search and rescue shows up at the pumpkin trailhead and your vehicle that you said you were going in ain't there. Maybe you changed plans and didn't tell anybody. Hopefully if you change plans, you're going to let them know, you know what, instead of pumpkin trailhead, we're going to do the Kentrick Mountain side of it instead, which is a whole different trail. We're going to park over there. And what are we up there? We're going to hike. We want to hike up to the fire lookout, check it out, have a little picnic, come on down, etc. Notify folks if you change your plan. Just be disciplined about that. And be kind to your 2 responsible adults. Let them know when you got home so that they, after 2 hours, are saying, geez, Shawn said he's supposed to be home at 6. It's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock tonight, and haven't heard from him yet. They don't feel good, and you shouldn't feel good for having dropped the ball on that. Let's see, this poor lady, was a SAR subject a couple summers back. She was an English professor at Arizona State University. She came up to Pine Flat Campground in the upper end of Oak Creek and was going to spend a few days up there. I think she had told some folks that she was going to go to Pine Flat. What she didn't do was tell the campground host or anybody nearby, she was by herself, that she was going to hike the Cook Stove Trail. And she just intended to go out for the day and do the Cook Stove Trail, come on back down and be back at the end of the day. She went hiking on a Wednesday. The campground host noticed that her camp was abandoned, nobody in it, car door open, all her personal effects are inside the car on Thursday. We get a call out Thursday night. Nasty bunch of weather came in. We didn't find her. We did our hasty search, which is route and location. We checked all the trails in the vicinity of Pine Flat because we don't know which one she's on. And then our team finds her in a slot canyon dead on Friday. And she did not die of the fall. She was immobilized by her fall, but then she died of exposure, having been out there for who knows how many hours, suffering through the cold and the rain and the whole bit. Had she said to the campground host, look, I'm going to do Cook Stove Trail, be back at 5 this evening. If not, start looking for me or get search and rescue down here. Had we gotten out that night, she'd still be here. Oh, okay. So that was kind of before, during, and at the end, and a few tall tales on the side. Does anybody have any questions?
It looks like we do have one that's popped up. So Victor wanted to know, what is the best technique for dealing with stress and fatigue mentally in a survival situation?
Stress and fatigue. If it's just psychological stress, starting with how you prepare. Are you fit? Did you take the right gear? Have you kept yourself hydrated and paid attention to your condition during? Boy, that goes a long ways towards alleviating any stress later. And I left a plan. Somebody knows where I'm at and when I'm supposed to come back. Oh boy, you know what? I can sit down and then best way to relieve it, stop, think, observe, plan. Here I am. Let me quit going. I mean, you know what? I got peak fever. I want to get all the way up there to the Humphreys Peak, but I'm not feeling so great. I'm getting a little stressed because of the weather or the altitude. Sit down. Take 5, drink something, eat a salty snack, take a look at your map or whatever it is you're using to navigate. If you've got people with you, say, hey, take a look at me. How'd I look to you? And make some decisions. At that point, it might be the altitude's getting to you and that's contributing to your stress. It might be time to turn around and start to descend, and you may feel better almost immediately as you get lower in elevation. Breathing is key. If you get stressed, stop, think, what's my situation? What's really going on out here? And make a plan of, okay, so how am I going to get myself to feel differently? And then pay attention to your breathing. I'll stand up here just a little bit. I call it short stroking. If you're taking breaths and they're only going down to about the end of your rib cage here, you are depriving yourself of oxygen. Your brain's going to say, you know what, we got to start your heart to beat harder and pump blood faster and so on because you're not getting enough O2. Make a conscious effort. They call it belly breathing. Expand your abdomen. Take some, get some of those good deep breaths in you. It's like test anxiety for some folks. If they could get a grip on their breathing, the stress will start to diminish. With preparation, have the right gear with you. Stop, think, observe, plan, work on your breathing. That's where I'd start.
We've got a few more popped up. Well, so I guess my question for you is, did you want to finish your presentation first and then we can get to these other questions, or do you want me to run through them now?
You know what? Let's do one more, then I'll finish and then we'll look at what we got at the end.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question is, Bob wants to know, why do you prefer the straight knife over the folding knife?
Without getting into too many knife geek details, a fixed blade, full tang knife is a stronger piece of gear every time than a folder. Folders are more compact and easier to carry and will do a lot of cutting jobs. But if you've got to process wood in terms of making a fire, or do some other heavy duty, they call it batoning or chopping or some of that kind of stuff. Fixed blade, full tang every time in my book.
All righty. You're welcome to carry on, sir.
Okay, so proceeding. Let's see. So that was the hiking portion. We said what we advertised, how to avoid a survival situation by learning something about safe hiking practices. We've done it. Now we're going to go into, so if it happens to you, you didn't prepare well, you got hurt, you made a bad decision, or you did everything right and something still came up and now you're hurt or compromised and you got to make a phone call. Here's how it works with search and rescue. The most important part, recognize the need. Look, I'm hurt, storm's coming in, I'm here by myself, nobody knows where I am. Screw it, I'm calling 911. We want you to make the call sooner rather than later. The longer you wait to make the call, the worse situations typically get. So you dial 911, the lovely operator on the other end, or a masculine person comes on and says, where is your emergency? And you can say, I'm on Kentrick Mountain and I have a search and rescue mission. Dispatch immediately is going to connect you to one of our search and rescue coordinators, and they're available 24/7, 365. And then you're going to get interviewed at length. Where are you? Who are you? What's going on? What do you have with you? What's your current status, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of questions. You need to be prepared for that. And then they may start advising you very quickly. Well, I've got you on GPS. I can see where you are. If you're lost and you're off trail, you can pick the trail back up if you go 300 yards straight north. It might be something that simple for your resolution. What we notice about folks who get in jams, they go out with this, it can't happen to me attitude. And if you don't take home any other message tonight, the take home message is, it can happen to you. There are them that have had it happen to them, and there are them who will have it happen to them. It might be a minor thing, but you know what? You can do your own calculus. How many times have I been out, no incidents? Stuff comes up. So the more you can learn, the more experience you get, the more you can practice safe practices, the less you can decrease that probability. So, but this is often what we find. And then you guys can see the list of stuff that comes up, and everything from uninformed regarding the weather, or, hey, we had a guy in James Canyon down the road here that feeds into Oak Creek Canyon recently. And it was, well, my buddy told me there was not much of a trail in the bottom, but there was a trail. There's no trail down there. It's boulder hopping, bushwhacking, wading, and in some cases swimming, not necessarily in that order. Guy got his family down in there. They got completely exhausted. We got to go in and help them out because they didn't do enough research on the front end. It wasn't that they were bad people. Dressed poorly. Any of us can be hypo or hyperthermic or dehydrated, and you can see all of those kinds of things. So don't be those people. When you call, I was just gonna model this here just for a second. Let's pretend you're on Kentrick, you got your rolled ankle, storm's rolling in, and you decided I should call 911. And I agree. And what I'm going to do, so let's see, 4 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock now when you're calling, and I'm sitting there at the dinner table. And you get the gist. I got my special night owl ringtone, and that indicates a call out. And I said, what I'm going to see at 5 o'clock when that call comes out, and it's regarding your situation, our search coordinator, who's already interviewed you at length, is going to send me a text that explains this is a Coconino County Sheriff Office's search and rescue call out for a litter carry of an injured hiker from Kentrick Mountain. At least 12 personnel needed to assist with a possible litter carry off the Pumpkin Trail. Indicate availability on IAR, that's our enterprise system, and respond to SAR, which is our building here in town. Wet weather, no cotton. That's what I would see. So what happens next people like Deb King here are going to disengage from whatever it is that they're doing, if they're available, get dressed appropriately, grab their SAR pack, and drive however far it is to drive to the search and rescue building. And we're going to meet there. And then they're going to say, okay, all 12 that responded are here. We're going to get a map. We're going to get a briefing. This is the circumstance. And they'll give us more detail than we just got in the call out. And then they're going to say, let's load and go. We're taking these vehicles. We might be taking UTVs on trailers. Who knows what the circumstance is going to be. So you're sitting here, okay, you made your call. You talked to the search coordinator, and they said, they got this information from you. Who are you? Who's with you? What's your urgency of need? I got a blown ankle here. It's not quite the same as hit my head. I've been going in and out of consciousness. So we have levels of urgency. Call out goes to us volunteers. We assemble, get briefed, geared up, and then we drive. If you haven't seen them yet in the county, the vehicles that we drive look like this. They all look like sheriff's deputy's vehicle, but search and rescue is actually written bigger. A lot of people, all they see when they see the vehicle is sheriff. And depending on the current state of their consciousness, they may have a reaction to that. Search and rescue is on the side of all of our stuff. And you can see that we modify some of our vehicles to go out in all kinds of gnarly conditions. So we can put, they call these mat tracks on our Suburban. And this is the tech truck with lots of gear for litter carries and technical rope and tech rescues. So who's coming? So these folks, 2 folks on our team are paid commissioned law enforcement officers whose job title says search and rescue coordinator. Everybody else, the other 100 of us, are volunteers. We're highly trained volunteers. I also like to think highly committed and excellent help volunteers, but we are volunteers. We don't all go on all the missions all the time. We go when we're available. So it's a mixed bag of who's showing up that night. I want to let you know that the folks that you see showing up in yellow shirts are going to have had intensive training in each of these kinds of categories. Just to pick one there, I'm one of the navigation instructors. Search and rescue newbies go to, after they go through the application process, pay some initial dues, get a background check. They get cleared to do the academy. The academy is 8 weekends, 2 days, most weekends, 1 day, some weekends. And for example, on the navigation, we do an entire day on how to use a map, half a day in a classroom, half a day in a field with exercises, an entire day on how to use a compass with a map, half a day in a classroom, half a day outside. And then similarly with a GPS, classroom, outside, tie all 3 together. And that's the initial 3 days, 3 full days of training just on the navigational component, and then gets reinforced continuously over missions as we go along. So all of that stuff is part of what we do. That's a piece that I handle personally. We're coming. I mean, if we did not know where to look, we're still going to see if we can interview enough people. Well, Shawn, he likes that pumpkin trail over there at Kentrick. Well, you know what? We might have an aircraft fly over. You know what? The vehicle matching Shawn's description is sitting there at the trailhead. Let's go. We're going to search the pumpkin trail and the nearby environments, see if we can come up with you. The search coordinator is going to tell you once you get close to hanging up, might be giving you some directions. Okay, you got a bad ankle. What do you got for shelter? Storm's rolling in. I can see that on the Doppler radar. Let me make a few suggestions. Then what? Patience is key. Picture this. Your job at that point is to wait. If you're, instead of scrambling around on that ankle and maybe tearing something up worse, as hard as it is to do alone and in the dark and unprepared, to stay put where your GPS says, we got a dot on our map that says that's where you are, that you got to fend for yourself until we can get there. Well, think about it. Okay, so I got to call out. It takes me, by the time we get assembled over there and leave, it might be 45 minutes from the time I got called, which is after you called. Now it's going to take us another 50 minutes to drive to the trailhead. How long did it take you to walk to where you are? 2 hours? We might send a hasty team, and some of our guys are a lot faster than you are, probably. unless you're one of these ultra trail runners, and we know we got plenty of those in Flagstaff. But they might zoom up, and these guys most of them will be EMTs or wilderness EMTs, and they'll do an initial assessment on you while the rest of the team is proceeding up the trail with the gear. Potentially, you're going to need to be put in a litter, put a wheel underneath it, and wheeled off. Anyway, long story short, it might be 2 to 3 hours before you see help. Then you're going to get assessed. Then you might get packaged. And then what? Now we're taking you out. First thing we're going to check is, so I guess my point is you need to be patient, because it's not like falling and turning your ankle on a street corner in Flagstaff or Page and calling 911, and the fire department's there in minutes. This is not the same thing. So you might be wondering, will I get to ride in a helicopter? Boy, sometimes they're available. Sometimes weather permits and situations permit that they can fly in. Will I get in the helicopter? Maybe. Sometimes they can't get down on the ground where we can get you in the helicopter, and you got to get short hauled, which is that we put the screamer suit on you and you get a ride with an attendant, and you get to dangle onto the helicopter from where they picked you up to where the ambulance is waiting. And that is sometimes a pretty thrilling ride over not too much higher than the treetops, right? Another possibility, if your injury, say you're on Kentrick and it's unusable, it's a compound fracture, you got bones sticking out, and there's no way, despite splinting and taking good care of you there for a minute, that you're going to get up and with trekking poles be able to hobble out with assistance under mostly your own steam. So what we package you, and this isn't a great picture of the litter, but there is a woman in here. For those of you that are wondering, this is the lava tubes out here north and west of town. This poor gal fell in here and broke her hip. And if you've ever been in there, it's a jumble of rocks on the floor and on the ceiling. It's way colder than it is outside. Paramedics got there first, assessed her, splinter, shoot her full of fentanyl. And now she's got to wait until the yellow shirts and the gear show up to strap her in the litter with a wheel. And then you can see we got a little rope assist going out here, some mechanical advantage, to very gently over the rocks, through the rocks, around the rocks, etc. And then ultimately we emerge into daylight and then put her in a nice warm ambulance so she gets to take a ride into town. That might be your circumstance getting down off of Kentrick, and it might take us, let's see, it took us 2 hours to 3 hours to get to you, assess you. Now another 3 hours down the hill, 6. You might be 7 hours or 8 hours before you get to, what do they call that? Advanced life support. Hopefully, all that happened to you is you tore some tendons and some ligaments, and it's kind of a mess, but we splinted you up. This is up on Humphreys Trail. And here's one of our subjects. And he is using borrowed trekking poles. We've splinted him, made a walking splint out of it. Bless his heart, he gritted his teeth and walked on down the hill. It took us forever. Every step mattered because he had the potential to make it worse. This mission was a twofer. This guy is the father of the gal who had a closed fracture on her ankle, who got packaged and taken off a different side of the hill. So we had 2 missions at one. I got to do the walkout. So that's if your injury was usable or you stayed put, you were just lost, we found you, and now we're just helping you. We'll walk all the way out to wherever it is, the car is, the trailhead, to get you back into touch with those that care about you, etc. Okay, I did my little estimate on time on the Kentrick call. So depending on where and what your situation is, it may take a while. It's another reason to take care of those 5 priorities and take the right gear with you. And when you get down to the bottom, are you done? Not quite, because now the search coordinator is going to want to interview you at some more length, because they got to put together a fairly substantial report on the incident and how it got resolved. So obviously, if you're medically compromised to the point that can wait, first things first. But yeah, you got to do an interview. It's not just, oh, hey, there's my car, get in, adios, thanks very much. And I think that is, as they say, that. Thank you for coming. I hope you got a little bit about what to do before, during, and after, and got a little bit more information on how this search and rescue stuff works. And if you got questions, we can take them. unless Megan's got stuff to say before me. Go ahead.
I do. I have a phone that decided to start going off. There we go. We actually have a handful of questions. And like Shawn said to everybody, if you have to take off, thank you so much for joining us. We did record this, so if you want to tune back in, we'll make sure we share that recording. So no pressure. We're not going to get upset with you if you take off, but I will run through. It looks like we've got 3 questions. So one of them was, if you run out of water, are pond waters drinkable?
Oh boy, well, that depends. What did you take with you, and where's the pond and what's in it? Let's see. In short order, water procurement and processing is kind of a sub-discipline of the stuff that we do in pond water. I mean, it could be as simple as get some pond water into my Ziploc plastic bag, filter it through my bandana into my clean canteen, which is food grade stainless steel, and I can put it right in the coals on a fire and boil it. And if I'm below 6,000 feet and I boil it for 1 minute, big bubbles, no troubles. We'll kill any waterborne pathogen in there. If you're above 6,000 feet, got to go 3 minutes. Maybe you carry water treatment tablets. They may take an hour's worth of half an hour or an hour's worth of contact time. The long story short is the pond water is drinkable if it's not contaminated with chemicals. You can make it drinkable. If it's contaminated with chemicals, that requires distillation, which is another deal. And the other thing I will say is, if it comes down to it, and it's dehydrate or drink the pond water, dehydrate and cease to function, die, drink the pond water. Most of the waterborne pathogens take at least 3 days before they make you sick. By that time, maybe you'll have been extracted and get to some medical facility and say, man, I drank some horrible water. The diarrhea is just starting. What can you do for me? Test, test, test. You got giardia. Here's what we're going to do. But what? You lived.
Next question is, what is the best thing to do if you are caught uninjured in a thunderstorm with lightning?
Thunderstorm with lightning. Okay. Almost no place outdoors is safe in a lightning storm. If you were looking for a place, on the top of the hill ain't a good spot. Under the tallest trees is not a good spot. Out in the open, you being the tallest object is not a good spot. Under a rock overhang, believe it or not, is not a good spot. In uniformly sized trees and everybody's pretty much the same height, that's a little better. Or on, a whole bunch of shrubbies and I can get down and be the same height as the shrubs, that's a little better. Obviously, going inside a building or inside a vehicle, or those are your prime choices. But then there is something, you'll see, whoever asked this question, if you get the resources that I'm sending out with Megan, the National Weather Service puts out a little lightning safety brochure, discusses all of those circumstances that lead to injuries from lightning and how to try to avoid it. And then they document something called the lightning position. And if it's imminent, the hairs on the back of your neck are starting to stand up and you're about to have a strike, getting low. And then I'm going to do the model this. If these are my feet, my legs, close together. The farther apart they are, the more of a voltage difference you can have. If there's a voltage differential, it goes up one leg through you and down the other leg. If they're close together, the voltage difference is reduced and you have a better chance of not having a big electrical issue. But check out the brochure. It's kind of an eye-opener. And yes, Coconino County, the Coconino National Forest, second most lightning strikes per acre of any county in the entire United States. It's a common thing here, especially on our high points.
And actually, I guess our last question here is kind of the same thing, but I'll say it anyways, just in case there's a little bit of a variance in your answer. Delmy had asked, I go hiking near my house often. Occasionally a storm will blow in when I'm out there. Usually I hustle home when I hear thunder. Is that the best choice or should I find shelter?
Hustle home, and when you hear thunder, is the best choice, unless home is way long distance away. Best choice. What the brochure says is, if you can hear thunder, you're close enough to the storm to be struck by lightning. As soon as you hear it, that's the sign. Go for shelter, preferably building or car.
Awesome. And it looks like that is everything. I think we're all set. Shawn, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise. We appreciate it so much. And everyone who's still on the call, we'll be sending out a survey tomorrow. Please let us know your feedback and let us know what else you want to learn, because Shawn has indicated he'd be happy to teach something else. So with that, everyone have a wonderful evening, and thanks so much.
You bet.